Well, thank you very much for joining us today on CISO Talks. I really appreciate it. I know that it's pretty busy time for you guys right now. One of the things I'm jumping straight into it, really. One of the things I'd like to understand a bit more about and talk with you a bit more about is around digital identity verification. First of all, explain to me what that means and why that's important right now. It'd be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thanks for having me, Aiden. It's
Thank
always
you.
talk with you. And I'm really looking forward to this. Digital identity verification is kind of this technology that I think we've all been wanting for a long time, right? One of the problems that we've always kind of looked at is, when we have a user coming in to the system, how do we really believe that user is who they say they are? Right. So previously, maybe they walked into a bank or into our place of work, or they're an employee and they're just getting hired, and we handed them an authenticator and we're like, all right, we know who you are. Here you go. And so we trusted them at that point because we kind of believed who they said they were. They're not going to tell us they're someone else. But in today's world, where we're kind of doing everything digitally, and we really don't interact, one-on-one very much anymore. That's really where we have to prove that identity and make that trust right from the get-go. And so digital identity verification is this solution that basically says, okay, how do we infer trust right from the start? How do we trust that user right from the start, get their devices trusted, get their identity trusted, and then allow them to do transactions with us? Allow them to log in, allow them to pay bills, allow them to do all kinds of different things. And so it's really that first step. I think, maybe I've been in this industry now for 25 years, and back maybe 20 years ago, it was called wet authentication, right? Like, how do we, that person coming through the door, how do we check to see who they are? And banks did that with, know your customer, KYC. Today that's pretty outdated, and that information is everywhere. Social engineering has stolen, where I live, how much I pay for my house, and my previous addresses and everything.
That's right.
So yeah,
it's easy obtainable, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So digital identity verification takes that to the next level, right? It kind of says, okay, what do you have that we can prove? Like, so let's take a government issued identity. Okay, so like a driver's license or a government ID or a passport or something that, someone had to prove who they were in order to get it in the first place. And then once you get that, let's scan that ID through a camera. So technology has come far enough that we can OCR everything on the document, right? We can read barcodes. We can make certain everything that the user is telling us matches what's in that document that we're now taking a picture of. Additionally, we can also look inside that document and see, are there things we don't trust about that document? Right?
It's interesting. So I just on that point, it's something I noticed the other day is that, I was having to go through a verification process to enter my information to verify my identity. And what it was asking me to do is upload a photo. And I'm like, well, I've taken a photo now of my driving license, which is on my phone. If I lose my phone, that's surely not an effective way of doing it. Surely that should be within the app, within the stuff. And I've seen this on several examples, and I think got to be careful how we use that as well, because that's quite a risk as well.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. So I think we're still in the beginning stages of digital identity verification. We're starting to see that the platform providers are providing digital wallets where we're going to start storing our identity verification cards.
Much better way of doing it.
Yeah, and so that's starting, but we're still kind of a paper-based organization, right? So we're still using these paper-based processes, and so if we can start to digitize them with just scanning of those identities, and so when they're scanning those identities, that picture of a picture, we can detect that. Like we can tell that you took a picture of a picture. So if you had it on your phone and you tried to take another picture of that, we can detect if you put another picture of yourself on top of someone's license. So
Brilliant.
I did that when I was before drinking age here in the U.S. But that's no longer, we can detect that now. Before it was much more difficult to do that. It's not so difficult to do that anymore. And that component of it, that verification of that that paper or plastic identity card, that's only the first part of proving the identity. The second part of that is proving the person on the other side that's holding that identity is actually the same person that's on that identity. And that's where you start moving into biometrics, right? Let's take a selfie of the user. And it's not just take a selfie and just take a picture and use a picture. It's more about proving that you're a live human being and that your live human being matches the photo on that document. So make you blink, make you smile, make you turn your head and cough. All of those things prove your liveliness that then you can then match up with that other document.
And that's interesting. And that's the process we had to go through for the COVID app. So when you go for the NHS app, they make you turn your head several times to actually validate that you and for all its flaws, I think that was quite an interesting approach, really. I think it was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is, true liveliness detection. That's really where you kind of change the difference between an iPhone facial detection or versus a true biometric where you're actually doing more than just seeing if the picture matches. So that kind of gets you into that. Once you're getting into that trusted environment, there's all kinds of other things that happen too, and it starts to open up here because while you're doing that process, it's not just about the ID and the face, it's also about where you're doing it. So we get the geolocation because you're doing it on a phone, right? So you have the geolocation information. You start looking at, is the phone compromised? Has it been rooted in some way? Is it a bad application? I think there was a report today that Google, it was said that there were 33% more attacks than there were last year in the App Store and phishing attacks and what have you. So those attacks just keep going up. And if we can identify what's happening in the context around your digital identity verification process, we can start to provide a full picture and we can start trusting that, right? So now we can say, okay, hey, there's the person provided a document that they provided their information first. Then they provided a document that backs up their information. We proved that document is good. We looked at the information on that document. We compared it to what they sent us. We looked at the face. Well, that looks good. We're now looking at where they're doing this. They're doing this, it looks like in their home location. That looks good. They're doing on a phone that hasn't been compromised. There's no rooting. There's there's not a virus on here. There's no screen scraping. All of that looks good. And we do that with something called app shielding. So you're looking at all of those different factors. And then now you're trusting the user, the device's credentials. So once the device starts generating credentials, and then that opens up kind of this passwordless world for us. Right. So now when I go to authenticate to a site, I don't need to provide a username and password. Right. The bank already trusts, or the application already trusts who that user is, who that application is, where they're coming from. We're passing all that information in. And the credentials are now, hey, it's passwordless. There's no username and password in environment anymore.
That's a much better way. It's a much better way of doing it, isn't it?
I think it's the way of the future. I think I know that a lot of users kind of have this stigma where you look at it and say, okay, if I'm not entering a username and password, then am I really being secure?